Hopefully you've already seen episode 1 where I talked about the fundamentals and the big picture about fat loss with a real focus on mountain bikers, but really it applies to any human, especially you active people out there like riders. So in that episode, we talked about the big picture. We talked about getting in a calorie deficit and how it needs to be consistent over a prolonged period of time to actually reach your health, fitness, performance, fat loss goals. Now, as well as food, we also touched on things like stress and sleep and drinking enough water. And if you haven't watched it already, make sure you hit the link, go and watch it now, and then come back to this. Now, though, we are going to talk about food. We're going to get a bit more into the details, including what to eat before, during, and after a ride or training session, as well as going a bit more into the weeds of what to eat on a day-to-day basis and how to think about it. Having said that, I'm not going to tell you you should eat this for breakfast, this for lunch, and this for dinner, and be prescriptive or provide you with any sort of food plan, because in my experience, they are of pretty limited value. Okay, you need to understand the bigger picture so that you can make your own choices based on how you feel, the foods you like to eat, your schedule, your lifestyle, and all that sort of thing. So this isn't an episode about, I don't call it nutrition or diet, special diet. It's just food. Okay, what you eat will have a massive effect on how you feel, how you perform, and your body fat. The first thing I want to introduce to you then is the idea of density, i.e. calorie density and nutrient density. Okay, so calories we already talked about in episode 1, okay, how much energy is in the food, and nutrients. So what we're talking about here are things like vitamins and minerals, basically. Okay, the stuff that whether you know them all individually or not, you know that you need in order to stay healthy physically and mentally and for you to perform at your best. Okay, so different foods fall in different places on those two scales. So there are some foods which are nutritionally and calorifically dense. Okay, so a great example of that are things like nuts or full fat dairy and things like that, where they are calorifically dense because they're high in fat. Remember, fat has 9 calories per gram. Okay, so for a given weight of that food, there's quite a lot of calories in it, but they are also nutritionally dense because they've got loads of good stuff in there, like fat soluble vitamins and minerals and all the good stuff there, that mean despite the high calorie content, that they are still healthy foods that can be part of your diet and lifestyle. At the other end of that spectrum, we've got basically the junk food. Okay, so it's food that is high in calories, so it's calorifically dense, but it's nutrient low density. Okay, there's very little actual nutrition in there. It's just calories. Okay, so we're talking about all the junk food, the cookies, the crisps, the pasties, that yellow food you get in garages from the little hot counter and all that shite. Okay, that stuff, yes, it fills you up. Yes, there's carbs, protein, and fat. Generally, there's a lot of calories in there, but there's very little in there that's actually going to do you any good and going to contribute to the healthy and normal functioning of your body. Okay, so that is at the opposite end of the spectrum there. Then we've got kind of the middle ground where you've got foods that are a low calorie density, okay, but are high nutrient density. And if you're paying attention, that's probably starting to sound pretty good, because what we're talking about here is, guess what, your veggies, maybe your leaner cuts of meat and fish and things like that. Okay, maybe you'd put sort of some beans and pulses in there and whatever as well. And so what we've got there is low calorie, okay, because what we're talking lower fat things generally here. So 4 calories per gram of protein and carbs, but nutrient dense. Okay, so they're packed full of vitamins and minerals and all the good stuff. They're going to keep you nice and healthy. Finally, then we've got the low version. Okay, so not that much nutrient, not many nutrients in it, not many calories in it. Okay, so you can think of things like, well, water, I guess, is is the ultimate answer there. It's like 0 and 0 basically, apart from, well, you might get a few salts in there actually, but basically And maybe you could put things like diet drinks in there. They're really low calorie, but also they don't have any nutritional value in there. And there's a few other examples in there, okay, that I can't really think of. But so if we're thinking about long-term fat loss, okay, and being in a deficit over a prolonged period of time, one of the best ways to approach this is to look at the calorie density of the meals that you're eating, okay, and trying to keep the quality of the meals high, i.e. the nutrient density high, whilst reducing slightly the calorific density of those meals. And so straight away, we've got a rough model here of how to go about approaching, planning your meals, planning your food, planning your snacks, okay? And so if you think about a certain meal, about how maybe you could take your regular meal that you have on a Tuesday or midweek, because a lot of people tend to get in routines, they eat the same stuff every week. How could you change that out? Where could we add some nutritionally dense food that is also low in calories, i.e. vegetables are your best bet here, or some lean protein? Like, where could we add that into that meal? And straight away you're thinking, well, we're adding stuff, surely that's more calories. But when we add something, what it's going to do is kind of naturally push something out. So I'm not really in the game of saying you mustn't have this, you mustn't have that, that's forbidden, da 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 da. I used to do that, I've been down that road. You can get some results, but I now think this is a better way of thinking about it. You need to think about adding things into your meals and into your diet that are going to kind of naturally push other things out. So how can you make your breakfast, lunch, dinner and snacks high quality? So dense in nutrition and lower in calories, okay? Because that's a really great way to start tipping the scales towards that calorie deficit, and then it becomes a habit, then it becomes a regular thing, and then we're on that path to long-term fat loss. Just to run you through a few examples then of what I'm talking about, and where people can get a bit confused with things that are healthy but maybe aren't supporting their fat loss goals. And the classic one is the mid-morning snack. And if someone says, are nuts a healthy mid-morning snack? I'm like, yeah, sure they are. Nuts are great. They've got loads of good stuff in there. However, it's really easy for those few nuts, that little snack, to turn into a handful, a fistful of nuts. And before you know it, bang, you've done 600 or 700 calories in a snack, and right there in that one moment, well-meaning, I'm eating, low carb, healthy, it's got protein, it's got vitamins, it's nutrient dense, but it's also incredibly calorifically dense, okay? And so little things like that can tip you over so you're no longer in a deficit. Now, I'm not saying don't eat nuts. I'm not saying nuts are bad for you. I'm not saying you can't eat nuts and still lose fat, okay? People always hone in on little things, okay? I'm just talking you through some examples so you can understand. Portion size is the next thing to address then, and that's at meal times, but also at those snack points throughout the day as well. And understanding that it can be your food can be as good quality as you like, but if you just eat too much of it, you can still end up having too many calories and not losing any body fat. So when we're looking at portion size, we can obviously look at the whole plate of food and just having a bit less of everything, or we can just be a bit smart. Where can we cut out from those meals and snacks some of the more calorifically dense stuff and keep in some of the lower density stuff? Because a lot of that low density stuff is great as well, because it can really fill you up. Like rice and vegetables, low calorie, really filling, and the veggies are absolutely packed full of nutrients, obviously. So think, how can I slightly reduce the calories of this meal without then leaving me feeling hungry for hours on end afterwards? Because ultimately, if you're hungry all the time, then you are going to fail in this fat loss journey. Having said that, there is definitely something to be said for getting back in touch with your appetite. Because a lot of people, most people, they don't really know what it's like to really feel hungry, because they just habitually eat all day. You have breakfast, you have your snack, you have your lunch, you have your snack, you have your dinner, and then maybe have a snack as you watch telly in the evening, and you're never actually hungry. And I'd suggest that it's a good thing to do, a few times to, miss out that snack, have a smaller meal, and just get back in touch with what your body's telling you about when you're hungry, when you actually need to eat, and then your feelings when you are eating about when you're actually full. Because a lot of people are overeating at meal times just habitually because they've always been told to finish everything on their plate. Oh, I've got to clear my plate, It's like your mum always told you. It's like I tell my kids as well. But actually, if your plate is overfilled every day, you just heap it up and you always clear it, regardless of whether you're hungry or not, then that's not a good thing. What you're better off doing is slowing your eating down, chewing it more thoroughly, being present whilst you eat. So we're not eating in front of the TV or anything. You can sit at a table. You can sit with your, a friend or family or whatever and enjoy your meal more slowly. And then you're going to start to get back in touch with those signals that tell you, oh, you know what? I think I've had enough. And then what's left on your plate, we're not throwing it in the bin, obviously, but then that can go for your lunch tomorrow or something like that. It's leftovers. You could use it again another day. Because when we're just in front of the TV, you're just shoveling, you're not thinking about it. You're not paying attention to what your body's telling you. You're barely chewing your food as well, which is a whole other thing. Okay, that's no good. Slow your eating down. Come away from the TV. Think about it. Experience hunger, and then think about those feelings that your body's telling you when you are actually full. You don't have to be stuffed after every meal. Okay, and a good little top tip is, I experienced this after Christmas dinner. That point when you're eating a meal and you do that sigh, like that usually means you're full. Okay, at Christmas dinner it's fine. You carry on eating like all day. Don't worry. The rest of the time, that's a great prompt to say, oh, you know what? I'm going to pause, have a drink of water, see how I feel, and then you're going to realise, actually, I'm not really hungry, but I was probably going to eat that just because that's what I always do. So it's time to talk about going for a ride, okay? So any exercise, really, it could be a run, it could be a ride, it could be going to the gym, anything like that. Now, if you were in a calorie deficit, then unless you're smart, your performance is going to drop off. And this is really relevant to, any, racers out there who are training hard. You're trying to improve your performance, okay? And you're also trying to lose some body fat. It's entirely possible to do both. But training hard whilst in a deficit is going to slightly limit your ability to make progress, okay? And you need to pay really close attention to how you go about doing this. The general rule is that if you're remaining in a deficit and you're going to do some training, is to concentrate your calories for the day around that training session, so that training session is as high quality as possible. So let's take the example of training in the morning, like 9-10 o'clock or whatever it is. So, and you want to be in a deficit for that day, okay? So number one, you're going to have your normal big breakfast. Okay, nice big breakfast is going to fuel you up. You got protein, you got carbs, plenty of carbs if it's going to be a ride, maybe a little lower carb if you're just going to the gym, and some fats. We're hydrating with some water, and you're thinking about the quality of it, so it's nutrient dense as well. So you're getting all the good stuff that you need so you can go and train. You're then going to go training, okay, or riding, or whatever it is. During that ride, again, part of you thinks, oh, I'm on fat loss, so I mustn't eat or drink anything except water during my exercise, during my ride, okay? Which is fine up to a point, but it's not very long before your performance starts to drop off. And if you're doing intervals or training in the gym or whatever, then potentially you're not going to get the results you want from it. So this is where it sounds a bit crazy, but I would suggest have a carbohydrate drink or something like that in your drink bottle. Have some energy drink. Or take a snack with you, have a bar, have a cereal bar, just normal food, or an energy bar like sports nutrition, okay? It's fine. But remember, those things obviously do contribute to your daily calorie intake. And when you finish your training or riding, what you should be looking to do, again, is to refuel yourself afterwards so you get that recovery started, so you actually make some gains, make some progress build some muscle, build some fitness, okay? And so that's where that post-training recovery meal or recovery drink are really valuable. So what we're looking for mainly here is protein and carbs. This isn't a time to eat fat, okay? So if you've been out riding for hours and hours on end, then you need a great big hit of carbs here with the protein, okay? And a recovery drink is really good for that. And that's generally going to have like 3 or 4 parts carbohydrate to 1 part protein. And you're going to really get a good hit of calories there as well. You're maybe going to get 3, 4, 5, 600 calories in there. But if you've been out riding for several hours and burnt 2,000, then you can still do that and be in a deficit for the day. If you've just been to the gym for an hour, then actually the real priority here is the protein, 20 to 30 grams of protein and maybe a bit of carbs in there too. And then we're just getting more like 1 to 200 calories in there as well. So what we're then doing is concentrating the day's calories, like the bulk of the day's calories are around the training session. That keeps the quality of the session high and it promotes recovery so that we can get the maximum out of that session. And then later in that day, we have a lower calorie evening meal and so on. And you can apply that model at any time of day from dawn to dusk and anything in between. Concentrate the calories around the training session or the ride if you don't train as such, okay? And that is going to make sure you enjoy it and that you can perform at your best, and it's going to allow you to stay in a deficit. So we talked a lot about food and how to make up a meal, how to think of your food across the day, and obviously about how to consistently get in a calorie deficit. Now, at this point, I need to throw out a bit of a warning about how low to go. Now, if you watch the first episode, I think it's really good to go hard at the start to make a real jump, see some progress, and that's just going to fire up the motivation. However, if you go too extreme for too many days in a row, like really low calorie, then you're going to start running into problems, in particular with your health. And this one generally can be a lot worse for women as well. It can affect women in a more negative way, going really low calorie for extended periods of time. So if we think about your total calories you're burning in the day, which I talked about in the first episode, we've got the calories that I'm burning now, sitting here, doing my job, going about my day, digesting, breathing, moving, all that stuff. And then there's the exercise calories. And they all add up to make your total calorie expenditure. However, you can think of them separately because of that, my day-to-day calories, my non-exercise calories that I'm using, I don't really want to dip too deep into that because then I'm taking calories away from my body, and it needs those calories just to function, for my digestion, for my health, for my energy levels and things like that. Okay, so if you're going, you're going in a calorie deficit that takes you deep into what you need day to day, and you're doing that regularly or day in and day out, then you're going to run into health problems. Then you're going to inevitably feel like shit and you're going to fail, and then you're going to just start eating again and probably put the weight back on and possibly more. So when you're looking at the deficit, yes, you can do like the odd day where it's like quite a lot lower, pretty savage, okay? And yes, you can do some harder weeks, but on the whole, we're looking for long-term and manageable, healthy, sustainable fat loss that can then give you a model, just an approach that can then serve you really well for life. Because in the long term, certainly I believe the goal should be that you're a healthy weight without really having to think too much about it. There's not good foods and bad foods. There's no guilt attached with having some chocolate or some cake or something like that, because you know that as a whole you're eating really well and your weight is healthy and stable. I'm not completely shredded, but that's basically how I've been my whole adult life, because I pay some attention to it. I know that if I want some treats on the weekend, I can enjoy that. I don't feel bad because I know that, I'm going to eat a bit. I'm not going to eat any treats in the week probably. I'm going to eat my water, drink my water. I'm going to get my sleep. I'm going to exercise regularly, do an active job, and altogether, I can just maintain a steady, healthy weight all year round without it having to be all encompassing, all consuming. And that, I believe, should be the goal. Like, not to be like Ben, okay, but just to be in a position where you can just enjoy yourself. And if you want ice cream, you have fucking ice cream, because the rest of the time you're eating your veggies, you're getting your protein, you're drinking your water, and you're being smart about it. So I hope that this episode on food has made things kind of clear without prescribing exactly what you should eat. Because I still haven't told you should eat yogurt and bacon and da 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 or whatever. And I'm not going to. There's no food plan. It's about looking at what you're doing. How can you make some changes and understanding, okay? That is what's going to help you make some long-term changes to what you eat, how you eat, to your habits, and ultimately lead to you being successful or not in your fat loss goals. Thanks very much. So if you've got any questions, you know what to do. Make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe. Send this to a riding buddy who could do with losing a few pounds, okay? Do it sensitively though, because I'm not into fat shaming or anything, okay? And yeah, spread the word. I'll be back soon with episode 3 where I'm going to talk more about the actual exercise side of fat loss.